Professor Datta. This is for your kind words, and I am thrilled to get this opportunity to speak to all of you. And I believe that any workshop is successful only because of the participants. So I think there's going to be a lot of peer learning. I want to, at the onset, let me tell you that this particular content that I have created, they are primarily the secondary research from all the, goals, SDG goals, as well as what has happened during COVID. So what we will do is we'll try to keep it slightly interactive, looking at the paucity of time. So I've kept the content less, but I'm sure, I hope we all make a lot of meaning out of it, and some more research in this area can start. So if we are looking at this entire area of sustainable education, anyway, education should be sustainable. And then there is a concept called inclusive world. So these are not now new words. These are words we've been hearing. When we looked at 2000 onwards, we had Millennium Goals. Then we had 2015, the SDGs. So when we are looking at it, so typically if you look at in this workshop, what we're trying to identify that sustainable education is a whole systems approach, which educates students long-term solutions for economic prosperity, responsible citizenship, and the health of our natural ecosystem. So we are looking at a multifold way where you are educating people for a better world. Then educating for sustainability prepares youth of higher education learning institutions to participate in the shift towards sustainable future. So primarily we are talking about a co-creating environment where the students, the youth participate in the learning process. We have been talking about student-centric learning. There is also something where you can talk about co-creating, whether these are patents, whether these are ideas, whether these are even, entrepreneurial workshops that take place within the universities. So educating for sustainability. Now, overall, if we look at, we are all very familiar with this, that educating, they're looking at the goal number 4, definitely the focus is on quality education. That overall aim is to provide quality education to all. So ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So I want you to stay with 2 points, concentrate on these 3 points here. Of course, quality is one word, which means it has to be continuously improving and delivering what it is set out to deliver. Then we are talking about equitable quality education, which means for all, and promoting lifelong opportunities for all. So what we are seeing in this very transformed world, that it is not just important to learn one system. Today, if you look at most of the higher learning institutions, not only in India, but internationally, few buzzwords have come in like AI, ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud computing, data analytics, data science. All of this is actually looking at how things are changing and how individuals need to change. Today, DevOps is also picking up in a very big way. And how can that be used even in creating a sustainable environment? So the core elements of the sustainable development, there are 3 core aims, which we are very clear about: economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. It is crucial to harmonize them. So we are looking at on one side. So at the same time, we need to look at that, either of them. So when we are looking at pushing the economic growth, we need to see whether all members of the society can be included. When we are looking at the same time, how environment can be protected in spite of industrialization. So sustainable economic growth, achieving sustainable livelihood, living in harmony with nature, and appropriate technology are important for sustainable development. So when this word, I really appreciate that the whole concept of living in harmony with nature, it has come to us because every time we are going beyond the nature or we are not following the environmental protection concepts, we are facing some kind of calamity. A lot of, floods, and a lot of natural calamities, glaciers, lots of problems that we are facing today. So attainment of inclusive and equitable access to education, which has suffered due to the COVID-19 pandemic, needs attention. Here I want to say that, each one of you, if you just think back 2 years back, 2020, when COVID hit us, although we said that we have celebrated that, digitalization really transformed the way education was happening, a lot of technology has come in, but we have to believe that all of the participants, students, faculty, especially the students, were the learners in crisis. So it has impacted them. So what we have to understand that during those years, there are many man hours lost. If you look at the dollar value of that, that is a huge amount. And not just that, forget about the urban population, but in large countries like India and others, you will see that a lot of suburban areas where did not have so much of great support of technology, people suffered. So 3 pillars, how do you create this? How do you create a sustainable education within higher education institutions? So internationalization of higher education, I think today is a great example of conferences where people can come together and create new knowledge. So you create a new roadmap, come out with white papers, and it would be a great in-person experience on real time that research can take place. So internationalization of higher education is becoming now the order of the day. If you look at the top scholars, we are bringing into the classroom. Not just that, the collaboration that are taking place. Not only are you partnering, which is the third point, industry partnership, but you're partnering with academic institutions. In some case, these are mentor institutions. And in some case, these are institutions which can co-create and work on same project. A good example of that is the COVID time, how the vaccines were being created. In multiple locations, in different labs, people would work and collate the research data. The second part is technology-enabled environment and the digital learning. We have seen in the past, in the last yesterday, today, in our conversation, that we have moved ahead. We cannot go back to pre-COVID times. So we are definitely into a new normal phase where we have to really use the technology and environment that we have created through not only creating a learning management system, or if you look at within the classroom, how on real time you are solving, you have simulated labs, you are creating, solving real problems through, look at the way hackathons today are working. So different companies, and through hackathons, you're solving big problems, which includes the data science. If you look at, you will see within data science, you are solving those problems. Actually, people are working together to get immediate and quick result. So I think digital learning and this technology is a great asset that one needs to look at. And finally, industry partnerships and integration. To give you an example, say at a university environment, if you are going to teach, say, data analytics, and you are collaborating with SAS, so what happens on the real data, the students are able to solve the problems. So the learning is very important. And what happens is, in a less period of time, within a semester, before they go on for internship, students are ready to they have learned because they've worked on the real data. And all of this is coupled with the government policies, which will play a vital role. So previously, I think in the last session, when Dr. Datta spoke about, the rankings, we discussed briefly that, yes, most of the countries have realized how we are interdependent. So what has happened is, within India, after many years, the new policy which has come has really been very inclusive and has taken care of this aspect of how to create sustainability. So I was looking at, so I thought of sharing with each one of you that over the past few years, India has a record FDIs and created millions of jobs. And it is in this journey that Invest India and startups have seen a different life altogether. So I think that's just an example to tell you where we are going. So like that in every different country, I mean, within every country, the government is today working on taking care of the situation. Like we are looking at another very important concept. Before that, I would like each one of you to really note down wherever, you can also put it in the chat box, that what do you mean by accessible world? What do you mean by accessible? Even not even a word, what do you mean by accessible? You can even put it on your chat box that according to you, how do you define, or if you have to close your eyes and think about a word called accessible, what comes to your mind? Would anybody like to share? Please go ahead. You can unmute and please share. What do you mean by accessible?
I think, Professor Banerjee, what you said earlier, equitable. It's accessible to everybody. Doesn't matter who you are.
Equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity. Great.
No discrimination.
No discrimination. Absolutely. Wonderful. So can we imagine, all of us, let's imagine that there is a huge auditorium, right? And all kinds of people are walking towards the auditorium. Let's do some kind of an imagination game. When we are walking towards the auditorium, there is a very small ramp, and I can see a lot of people who are disabled. And disability is something which is at all ages, for all people. At some point in time in life, everybody is disabled. Old age could be a disability. A pregnant woman could be disabled. A person who has got a, in the war has become a victim could be disabled. Somebody with some other learning disability could be disabled. So when do we say that the building had good access? The building would have good access, not when you have the fire and other, emergency measures. It would be accessible, or the auditorium would be successful where you have a very inclusive, where it becomes easy for people to get in and get out of that place. So you can imagine that if you have to transform the world into an auditorium, if you have to convert all the countries coming together and make it accessible world, I think the beauty of it lies in what we can do in educational institutions. Now let's quickly go to the word inclusive. Inclusive world, we have been talking about it. So primarily in inclusive, we are taking into consideration each and every person in the society. So I wanted to bring out few things like social inclusion. So social inclusion in the process of improving the terms in which individuals and groups take part in the society. So not just caste, creed, color, but also the ability, opportunity, dignity, disadvantaged on the basis of their identity. So everybody gets an opportunity to be part of it. Think about, as we are entering into the Christmas season, isn't it interesting to see how different parts of the world and the population are included? Are we really taking care of that? So is the world where we are moving, is it an inclusive world? So within the policies, one has to create an inclusive culture. And especially in situation when you take us back to, education or education for sustainable development, I think social inclusion will be at the top of the line. Now, humans have made a very impressive economic progress. We are very proud of what we have done, including technology, right? However, if you look at the past 2 centuries and look at the luxurious lifestyle, but the process has been achieved at a tremendous cost of environment. We are all aware of it. So ever increasing exploitation of natural resources coupled with environmental degradation has reached a point that now theaters and the future of mankind, that this threatens the future of mankind. United Nations Conference on the Environment and Development of Earth Summit, which we're very well aware of, in 1992, the world leaders signed the Framework Convention on Climate Change and Biodiversity. I think this
Sorry, Dr. Datta, you need to unmute.
Oh, yeah, I think she lost. No, she's there.
sorry, I think I'll have to share again.
Oh, please, yes. I thought I lost you.
Sorry about that. Just a second, yeah. So I think this Rio Summit adopted Declaration for Achieving Sustainable Development in the 21st Century is something that I want each one of us to think and ponder about. Now, another very interesting fact that I want each one of us to think, and Mahatma Gandhi, I think everybody knows him in terms of a world leader, person who propagated non-violence. So I think one of the things that is very important here is talked about how much is enough. The earth provides enough to satisfy every person's needs, but not for every person's greed. So I think this is something which is very important that is happening and hitting us today. So in educational institutions, we have to really concentrate on this enoughness. What is enough? And coupled with that is consumerism. We desperately want to possess all the goods and services, no matter what environmental price we are having to pay. I think that needs change. Now, what are the questions? This you need not answer, but I would want each one of you, before the sun goes down or before you go to bed, in your own notes for the conference today, what are the important factors or points that sustainable development should consider? Is it the poverty? Is it the life below water, life on land, or all 17? Or what are the little steps that we can take to create sustainable development should we consider, and what would be the role of education? The second question is, what do you understand about carrying capacity of the environment? We have been talking about it in most of the conferences. If you see all the published work, is there a carrying capacity? Are we altering the carrying capacity? So if you see the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic that spread across all the world, 2020, how it changed, it is a crisis affecting every aspect of our life. That revealed the fragility of our interdependence with nature. So we realize that in such a situation comes, we have to take care of the nature and the environment. And this is a warning and alarm that we know that one degree centigrade in the last 19th century, with most of the warming occurring in the past 35 years. So we cannot go beyond this. If we go beyond this, we are going to have a serious problem. Now, with the world population growing, this is where we are. We are moving very, very fast. And if you look at what the United Nations Secretary General Antonio talks about, battle for our lives. So for our own survival, we must learn to live together sustainability on this planet. So what are we going to do? Education for sustainable development. So if you look at the education for sustainable development, we have to see the action-oriented, innovative pedagogy to enable learners to develop knowledge and awareness and take action to transform society into a more sustainable one. So here we are talking about learners, not just learner-centric, but including the learners and creating that kind of pedagogy. So if you look at education for sustainable development for 2030 builds on the Global Action Program, which is the GAP. It places strong focus on educations and contribute to the achievement of sustainable developmental goal. So we have to take care of the gap. To fill the gap, we need a global action program, gap for gap. So ESD for 2030 directly contributes to SDG 4. And the target is SDG 7, where we are talking about, the future. We are talking about quality education, lifelong learning. So to provide relevant education that puts responsibility for the future at the center. We are increasingly asking if what people learn is truly relevant to their lives. So transform themselves and transform societies. So when you are asking as an educator, when we are asking our students to take up projects, individuals to take up projects from the 17 goals and try to find out an answer. When entrepreneurs are doing startups, people can be motivated to take up startups to solve some world crisis. Social entrepreneurship anyway has become very popular today. So the International Panel of Climate Change, that in order to contain the effect of global warming until the end of the century, we cannot go beyond a certain increase in temperature. We must urgently learn to live differently. Goal and quality of education is a key enabler, and that's sustainable development goals. So it's extremely going to be, is going to have a far-reaching changes in the society. So we have to take into consideration, and how? By using that in the educational environment for the youth. So if we look at what is the right fix? What is the right fix for where we are today? The ESD for 2030 aims to build such a sustainable world which will strengthen and contribute in achieving that 17 SDGs. So this is a kind of a right fix that we are talking about. And if you look at the quality of education, so not just the SDG 4, but SDG 4.7, which is emphasizing on quality of education, talks about pedagogy, talks about inclusive learning environment. That is what I think higher learning institutions have to contribute. This will have reflection in the rankings as well. As you know, now the sustainable developmental goal-based ranking has come in, how individuals are doing. Then also cohorts have come in. For example, how together BRICS countries are doing, how the development bank that has been established, how they are contributing together to see that as developing worlds, how they are, because nearly 50% of the population is in the BRIC countries. So sustainable lifestyle, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and non-violence, global citizenship and appreciation of the cultural diversity. So which means it's something like swimming. If you don't take care of the water around you, you're going to drown. So the ESD is a key instrument for lifelong learning. So educators to systematically integrate ESD in their curriculum, in their research, in their deliberations. Now, this is something which I want to contribute here, and I want each one of you to ponder about it. We have been talking about consumerism, enough, what is enough is enough. But who are the consumers today in the world? You will see the large number of youth today are the important group of consumers who are making decisions. So the kind of money or the technology or the lifestyle we have to, we have to influence the sustainability trajectory of their countries. You have to empower and mobilize young people for all genders. Therefore, it is a central part of ESD implementation. So in order to implement ESD, education for sustainable development, we have to mobilize youth. And how? Who are the main actors? Youth across the world. So such conferences, I think large number of young people who can be motivated to come and create that network. The climate change, there are a lot of activists who have come in, but that alone will not help. Youth-led, youth-focused group, organizations and network. And I think when I say organizations, I definitely want to talk about the higher learning institutions. Decision makers. And when I say networks, I think what we are is today a network. What Dr. Datta and others are doing is a network. So I think that's a great power. So decision makers, members of public and private institutions, community, actors, parents, families. So UNESCO is partnering. So this is what I want you to be with while we are going to making an attempt to see where we can go from here. So UNESCO is partnering. So critical stakeholder in this regard is the higher education institution. Let us highlight the role played by higher institutions, business schools in inspiring, developing future practitioners with sustainable values. So whether you're creating an impression or impact in the locality around you, whether you are adopting suburban villages, whether you are taking care of the homeless, anything, how are you creating? We are talking about access quite a bit. But in access and education, who are gaining? Are there the people who are below the poverty line? Are we able to take care of that? I think these are some of the things that business schools and higher education institutions have to implement. And social inclusions, that I said in the beginning, globally, the loss in human capital, wealth due to gender inequality is estimated to about $160 trillion, which is a huge number. Afro-descendants continue to experience significantly higher levels of poverty, 2.5 times higher than Latin America. 90% of children with disabilities in developing countries do not attend school. In many countries, it is especially difficult to tackle the LGBTI inclusion, discrimination, and violence. So we are talking about a very grave picture. So there are a lot, I think, miles to go before we sleep in this game. So 2030, to reach to that goal, we really need to do a lot. World Bank has prioritized an inclusive recovery from COVID-19 pandemic. By inclusive education, every child has a right to quality education and learning. Disability is one of the most serious barriers for education across the globe. So this is another point I want each one of you to highlight, that are you taking care of people around us? Advocacy. So UNICEF promotes inclusive education, discussions, high-level events, and other forms of outreach. So let's start getting involved with such focus groups. Rising awareness, awareness raising, where UNICEF shines a spotlight. So children with disabilities, by conducting research and hosting roundtables, workshops, events for government partners. So primarily what we need to do, we need to really look at the most important thrust areas. So capacity building, creating the capacity by training, whether it is e-learning, whether it is working on entrepreneurship, whether it is startup environment, whether we are trying to create that upskilling, reskilling, or the run, which Dr. Chinoy was talking the other day. For everything that we need to do, we need to create capacity. So here I remember doing a lot of projects and especially some of the EU projects have contributed in this area of creating capacity in higher learning institutions. So what I understand is institutions to do that need to come together. So those three areas become again very important. That industry integration, technology-enabled environment, and if you look at the focus on innovation. So implementation support, UNICEF assists with monitoring and evaluating in partner countries to close the implementation gap between policy and practice. So if we put together the policies of the government, identify what, in fact, I feel that higher learning institutions would have a role to play even in diplomacy, because the kind of research that goes in can be contributed towards progress. And I would say a good example of that has been in India, as Prime Minister Modi has brought in a lot of emphasis on empowering the educators. So I want to stop sharing it. And I also want to tell you the focus has to be on education. Like, what is the purpose? So constantly, if we start asking questions, that would be extremely important. So I want to stop sharing. I don't know whether I have stopped sharing. Okay.